What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is the Bridal Banner reaction, impressions, analysis. I'm sure most of you know the drill by now. I'm not going to go into too much as to what's happening here. We're going to look at the units, we're going to look at the skills, and give you my thoughts, how viable I think these units are, in, of course, the respective competitive fem modes, being Aether Raids, Arena, Summoner Duels, and so forth. After this video, there will be a community post, a are you pulling, should you pull, would you pull kind of thing. So check out the community tab to give your vote and your thoughts, which will be featured in the upcoming should you pull analysis video. I'm going to be covering the most important unit of this banner, which I believe is Eliwood Roy Duo or Harmo or whatever. So check that out in the future. Before we begin, a great F2P way to support this channel is to, of course, click the subscribe button, because it seems statistically 35% of you watching are not subscribed. So let's move that up a little bit, shall we? And smashing like button, making it blue, just like the color of Lilina's tome in this video, blue. Finally, if you want to keep seeing me for years to come, the way to do that is, of course, checking out the Patreon, potentially coaching sessions as well I offer to help you guys reach a higher level or more enjoyment out of this game. So check out the Patreon and coaching links below. I'm also on Twitch, stream almost daily, 5 times a week, with some pretty high-level gameplay and commentary there, associated with, of course, an F2P player, being myself. So yeah, let's do this. Let's start with Lilina. So this is another Bridal FE6 alt banner, I guess. I did believe we have a moment there of her stats. Maybe. Yep, it was there just for a second. So we do see that she is very attack heavy and res heavy, with almost completely dumping that speed and defense. Now, as we'll see in a moment, that defense is further dumped by her A skill, but yeah, that is a very, very min-max stat spread in attack and res. So let's see if that's also backed up. As we can all see by a skill set, she is carrying Gifted Magic, which was something exclusive to her legendary alt, but now it's on this seasonal alt as well. So Gifted Magic was her AoE, but it's only a 0.8% difference, a 0.80 rather, an 80% difference, as opposed to the regular specials like Growing being a 1-to-1 difference, and the Blazing specials being a 1.5, 50% increase rather than a decrease in the differences there. So her special is pretty similar to her legendary version. As you can see here, we have a slaying plus a times pulse type effect, or rather it's not times pulse, but it's only turn 1. So on turn 1, she charges up her gifted magic. And then as long as she initiates or is within 2 spaces, she has attack res plus 6 during combat, but also deals some additional true damage based on her res. So this is actually really good because it does define her a little bit differently than, of course, her legendary version. This one should hit pretty hard, if not harder, than the legendary version. Now we have a brand new A skill. This does seem like it'll be inheritable, and it's pretty much like a life and death version, but instead of bumping speed, it's bumping res instead, and then dumping defense. And at least it doesn't dump speed, and it only dumps defense. So I would call this like an L&D version, but working on res as opposed to speed. Now I totally expect that we'll see something like a Still Earth or something, which will be just attack and defense plus 7, and then dumping res minus 5. I can see that coming in the future, but this is perfectly suitable for the way Lilina works, and it'll be really good for another other type glass cannons that also like to pump up, let's say, their attack and res, or in the future attack and defense, and they don't really care too much about the speed. So it's a great alternative to something like Life and Death, and of course it has some great synergy with AoE specials, in this case being Gifted Magic. Great synergy, great base kit. Nothing really to say beyond that, but it's a good variation to Legendary Lilina. I could see her finding some use again as an air offense unit, or potentially an air defense unit on Cavline, but by no means this is going to be like some sort of must pull. Just a nice new addition to the roster, if anything. Next up is Sophia as a Red Tome Flyer. Red Tome Flyers are not that common, I would say. We still don't really have like a totally defining unit for this role. You'd have like your support in the form of Versa, maybe your dancers like Duel or Harmo Dorothea. But in terms of like a super strong nuker, I can't think of too many off the top of my head. If you think of some, then just let me know in the comments below. I'll read that after, of course. Anyways, so Sophia here does have a preference tome, She has a pretty simple condition, of course, that 25% HP condition, but that is a Raven Tome with a final text there saying she has a guaranteed follow-up. So it's a Raven Tome with Weapon Triangle advantage against not only greens, but colorless, and she gets her auto double. So this is pretty good because there aren't too many Raven Tomes that have all these additional effects. There is something like Fallen Leons, there is a couple like Young Leon, and of course like a Refine on, let's say, OG Leon or Cecilia. But an auto double isn't that common. I don't think I can even think of anyone. Most of them would be using like QR, or maybe OG Leon was using QR on his Raven Tome. But realistically, this is pretty nice. It has the extra stats. It has the TA against green and colorless, and of course the auto double. Now, in terms of the rest of the kit, there's nothing too interesting there except attack res hold. So we did have speed res hold, I believe, on Harmo Sonia, and now we have attack res hold as well. Now I do think attack res hold is probably a bit more useful than speed res hold, because with speed res hold, you pretty much wanted to give that to somebody who is going to buff up units that really appreciate the speed. While attack res hold, it increases the condition, the space in which this is effective, but it's better used to support, let's say, tanks, because you usually want to be debuffing attack, making sure those tanks stay as sturdy as possible. So yeah, individually, I think Sophia is cool, interesting, but again, the same old problem with like range flyers is they really don't have too many B slot options, even to this day, and you're pretty much going to just throw like Trace on there and call it a day. Next up is Cecilia here, who I believe is a Red Tome Cav. And in terms of Red Tome Cavs, as we'll see in a moment, this isn't really going to add anything to the game, guys. This is pretty much our 4-star focus. So if you do like Cecilia, and I am a Cecilia fan myself even, then this is going to be kind of like a flavor pick to pick up. I totally expect someone like Cecilia here to have, again, fairly similar stat spread to her other variations. So I'm sure she'll have a high attack and a high res stat, maybe a decent defense stat, but not much speed as well. If we follow her other alternate forms, it's probably going to follow that suit. In terms of fodder, this only has Ruse and a Rally Plus, and of course that weapon. But the weapon is just kind of a weapon that is going to add some more damage and I guess more bulk, because it just doubles down on any bonuses you already had. This is a great weapon if you're going to pair it up with something like Unity, so then you can really, if you do get, let's say, debuffed, you still get the benefit of the weapon, but you also get any further benefits from getting those things also debuffed. So like attack res Unity would go really well with this weapon for some synergy, but overall I don't really expect Cecilia to have much going on here, so unfortunately, this would just be a flavor pick, and maybe you could use her on something like Cavline. Maybe if you gave her Trace, then she could be decent on something like Air Offense. But realistically, nothing too impactful here. Next up is Roy and Eliwood, who are running a Green Axe Cav. Now, we already had a Harmo Green Axe Cav, I think 2 actually, in the form of Veronica, plus Xander, and of course Summer Shida. And to be honest, this is already looking pretty similar. As we can see by the weapon, we have tons of effectiveness on all dragons and beasts, where Summer Shida was armors and all the physical weapons, except daggers, I guess. And we still have the Kanto 2 here. Now, Kanto has gone a bit weaker due to Kanto control, especially in something like Summoner Duels, and even in AR offense when you run into Medeus. But realistically, this weapon isn't totally bad because it is slaying, which is something that Summer Shida didn't have. And by having slaying, this will make these guys really good as Gale Force options right away. They have an initiation clause, which is the same as I believe Summer Shida as well, giving 5 to all stats, but also doubling down on the bonuses on the unit that they have, then debuffing further stats on the attack speed defense res based on their own buff. So it's just going to create like a sort of stat swing scenario, but what I think I truly appreciate out of this weapon is that it is a bit different than what Summer Shida was doing, where Summer Shida was hitting those physical types and armors, and these guys are hitting the dragons and beasts instead, but the slaying will make it stand out without a doubt. Now, the other things of note here, of course, the preference C skill and the new B skill inheritable. Now, Flow of Force is just going to remove the penalties on the unit holding it, which is okay, I would say, especially if the unit is very heavy on attack and speed. So if these guys end up having a very high attack and speed stat, then Flow of Force can stay there, keep their auto double from happening, or rather they are not going to get denied by somebody like Brave Hector or Warrior Fighter or Fallen Edelgard. That's okay, but I do think Flow Guard is probably still going to be better than Flow Force in a lot of scenarios, as you're able to deny those hard-hitting retaliations, such as Fallen Edelgard with Bonfire. Flow Guard really does hurt Edelgard from killing back, whereas Flow Force, you're likely still going to die on the retaliation for a unit like this. Maybe, depends. In this case, maybe these guys just can one-shot something like Fallen Edelgard because of the beast effectiveness and just having an extremely high attack stat, but not going to say for certainty whether that's a thing or not. However, as we can see by the preference C skill, we have a start of turn condition for all the non-dragons and non-beast types, of course, similar to Legendary Roy, and they're just going to buff themselves by attack speed 6 and those allies as well that are within 3 spaces. So this is great. It works like a Hone Oath type effect. If there's also 2 or more on the team that are not dragons or beasts, so if you're really like encouraging this whole non-dragon, non-beast type scenario, and of course the effectiveness being against dragons and beasts, you're also going to neutralize effects on the whole, I want to call this like a tempo effect. So they're not going to accelerate enemies, and of course they're not going to get denied their special. This is really good, of course, like I mentioned, if they're going to be using something like Gale Force or dealing with Fallen Edelgard. So they don't need Flow Guard, these guys, but Flow Guard will likely be really good when you're not using, let's say, these guys on other units that want to beat up Edelgard and get their double, not get denied, and not die to a bonfire. Either way, very synergistic kit, and I could see these guys being used in plenty of modes, specifically air offense, especially Gale Force strategies, and Summoner Duels, and even with Canto Control being there, you still get at least 1 movement Canto, so that could be really good, and you could give them something like Hit and Run, so you could get effectively still about 2 to 3 movement of retreat, even with Canto being restricted from Canto Control. So I still feel like these guys are pretty good. They're not completely not meta relevant because of all the changes in the meta because of Canto Control, of course. So with their Harmonized skill as well, they get defense at res 6, which is okay. And then they get this effect, which is Treachery. So they're just going to do additional true damage based on the bonuses they have. This is synergistic, of course, with their C skill, which is giving them attack and speed, but they're also buffing defense and res 6, so they're just going to do a lot of damage post Harmonized skill, and this is pretty good. It is going to help them, I say, in Summoner Duels, where it's most impactful. You can use these Harmonized skills, and of course, the dual skills, but everywhere else, it's not going to be that relevant of a Harmonized skill at all. Okay guys, so the banner begins in 2 days. As I mentioned, I'm going to be posting a community post, so go ahead and drop a vote as well, or see your thoughts, provide your thoughts, or see others' thoughts as to what's happening. Some of you will be featured in the upcoming video for that. And with that being said, that is going to be my analysis, impressions, first thoughts, whatever on these characters. Please let me know what you think of these characters in the comments below. Are you excited for these guys or not? I'll be able to read that right after. Thank you for watching as always. Much love. Smash that like button, sub if you haven't already, and I will see you guys very soon. Peace.